Welcome to Crossroads. I'm your host, Joshua Phillip. Today we have Jonathan Williams, the Vice President of ALEC. And so great to have you on the show, really.
Thanks for having us, and thanks for being here at the ALEC meeting.
Hey, my pleasure. So tell us a bit about your work first and what you do.
So as Chief Economist, as Vice President of ALEC, I oversee all of our economic policy issues, and I write the book Rich States, Poor States with Art Laffer and Steve Moore. And so I am generally in 25 or 30 states a year working with our ALEC state lawmakers to talk about good free market policy and what works and what doesn't. And we've seen all kinds of things move across the states over the last year, especially after federal tax reform got done with the Federal Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and what the states are doing in reaction to that, that and pensions and unfunded liabilities across lots of different areas. We track state debt and state budget issues. So there's never a shortage of issues to talk about when it comes to the fiscal space at the state level. Because after all, while the federal government continues to run massive deficits and $22 trillion of national debt, the states have to balance their budget every year and actually have to take care of those issues. So there's hard work to be done at the state level.
So I understand you do a report which ranks states depending on their tax policies and how friendly they are to businesses. And people may not realize that sometimes high taxes, it doesn't really maintain itself because businesses just leave. At least the businesses that bring in a decent amount of money just leave. And so tell us about your work on that and how you see this kind of affecting things.
Well, it's really the Laffer Curve playing out in real life, because high tax states, while they think they're going to have a linear relationship, they raise tax rates, they think they're going to get more revenue, but many times, as you point out, the California example and the New York example tells us otherwise, and those examples show that people vote with their feet and businesses vote with their feet, and they go to states that tax lower and have better business climates, and that's our Rich States, Poor States report in a nutshell. Is, taxes don't redistribute income, they redistribute people. And we see it all the time. New York is now down more than 1.3 million Americans on net over the last 10 years to the other 49 states. California's down hundreds of thousands of people on net over the last 10 years, but you look at where we are right now in Texas, and Texas is up 1.3 million people. Florida's up nearly 1 million over the last 10 years. So the four largest states in America tell a very interesting story, and that you have the two states, Texas and Florida, that are gaining, have no personal income tax, have low taxes across the board. And California and New York have a very different business model, if you will, with high taxes and regulations. And Americans and businesses are mobile, and we're seeing news stories every day about more real estate action in Florida and Texas because New Yorkers and Californians are just saying enough is enough, and either in retirement years or in business years picking up and moving and saying we want a better quality of life.
And so how do you it's an interesting point that isn't discussed enough, I think, when it comes to tax policy, that states, they increase taxes, and of course, as you mentioned, we saw it in New York where they raised taxes and suddenly a lot of the big businesses left, and tax season came about and they realized, oh man, we came up way short of what we projected it as, and they found themselves in a pretty rough spot. The high taxes don't always work out as planned, and businesses, they're not going to stick. What's the point of sticking around if you can do the same thing somewhere else and not have to deal with that? I think that dynamic is sometimes not very well understood, and I understand ALEC is one of the big organizations talking about that dynamic and trying to explain that, well, you want to invite businesses, you want to get more tax revenue, lower taxes.
That's right, and it's so important. It's, as Art Laffer says, it's not rocket surgery. It's basic economics 101 though, because when they raise the price of working or doing business in one state and lower it in another, should we be surprised that our people are leaving the high cost places and going to the low cost places, right? Because it's not like the services are worse in Texas or Florida versus the services in New York and California. So you're getting good services and you're getting lower price for those services. It's a no-brainer for many of the businesses. But at the end of the day, those of us who believe in economic freedom, this is an essential part of economic freedom, is letting people decide based on free market competition between these 50 laboratories of democracy that we have, and decide what works for them. And may the best man or best woman win when it comes to finding that state that has the best match for whatever that person wants to do, their family, their business. And at the end of the day, though, this competition is essential, and it keeps states in check, because states can't get away with bad policies for long, or all of a sudden, as you mentioned, New York raised taxes, New Jersey's raised taxes, and they've seen some of their most productive businesses and individuals leave for other states.
Great. And so when it comes to ALEC and the work you do, What made you want to get involved with this, and what was it that you saw that made you want to be part of this?
Well, mine's a very personal story. I grew up in Michigan. For those who followed economics for the last couple of decades, the last decade was not kind to Michigan. We were in a single state recession for nearly the entire decade of double-digit unemployment. And when I graduated from business school, there weren't many private sector jobs available, and I had to look elsewhere. And my town, I grew up in Saginaw, Michigan, kind of along the Detroit-Flint corridor in southeastern Michigan, is a town that shrunk by nearly half over the last 40 or 50 years. So it's a very personal issue to me, that what really matters for economic growth. People are great in Michigan. It's an amazing state, but why was it so far behind for that long? And it turns out it was a lot of bad policy that accumulated in Michigan. And thank God we turned the corner with right to work and tax cuts and things like that, that they've turned around Michigan, the Michigan comeback story. But that's why it's so personal to me, is I want to make sure other states don't go through what we did in Michigan. And we can, the great thing about ALEC is we can help tell other legislators, they can learn from the successes of some states, and then of course learn from what hasn't worked in states like Michigan in the past, or states like New York and California today.
Great. And so where can people learn more about your work?
Well, you can go to alec.org and also richstatespoorstates.org to download the book for free. We've got 12 editions of it now that we've been working on for over a decade, and so all of it's free for all of your viewers out there.
Great. Yeah, real pleasure having you on the show. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Great. Great. And everyone, please remember to like and subscribe. See you next time.